So every now and then, I get a repaint of something I already have, and I don't really know what to do with it. Making a video about a retool will normally be kind of a waste of time, since usually not enough will have changed about it to really give me anything to talk about. And obviously stuff like accessories and articulation especially are things that just don't need to be gone over twice. Sometimes they will change up the weapons by altering the color, which may be kind of worth talking about, depending on the situation of course, but articulation is almost never any different outside of maybe one joint here or there having more or less range because of the new sculpting that might happen. So I came up with an idea a while back where I would hold onto a lot of the figures I don't have much new to say about and then cover them all in one go. Welcome to the Repaints Palooza! The first figure comes courtesy of IronZero 2020. Thanks for the help, man. He'd like you to check out his DeviantArt page. I'm gonna link it in the description. If it's not there, I forgot because I suck. It's the figure that I've had the longest and inspired this whole video, Mutant Tygatron. This is an interesting one. It feels like it has a lot more paint than the original, but it's probably the same amount, just utilized better since they aren't doing the terrible dirty cat look. I will say that I thought the green seemed a lot more appealing in pictures. It felt more like the corroded copper of the Statue of Liberty, but in person it feels less alive than that. Overall, while interesting, I find that the new colors hit less than the normal ones. Though to be fair, green and white are a famous power combo. Of note, the new colors make the knees stand out a bit more like the cat paws that they are, but I also find that they slim down the shins a bit too, so there are pluses and minuses here. The figure feels great when compared to the normal version. I mean, the original Tigertron was no slouch, but on every joint, this one is tight and smooth. So it can easily hold a pose, and thanks to the heels included on this upgrade to the Cheetor, this can actually stand when compared to that thing with its piece of shit feet. I don't even know what they were thinking with those crappy feet on the Cheetor mold. The downside of these is, of course, now in the orange, they kind of look like Uggs. I can't make a decision if this mode should have the mouth open or closed. Head is pretty cool. The second or maybe first figure to use the new mutant head off the original figure. The other one was the spooky bad guy, but this is actually the one I find to be a bit more unsettling. It's strangely more feline feeling than every other interpretation of this feature, and I can't tell if that makes too much sense, or if it's an insult to the old bug face which wasn't supposed to make sense. I want to know so bad what it would have looked like if they ever tried to animate the mutant heads. Everything is the same as ever up to the alt mode, and the most I have to say about this is that this boy! Hello, boy! Somehow feels a lot more like a house cat than the normal one. It's probably just the cream-colored chest. Then there's Shattered Glass Blur, a much better use of a very bizarre mold. People have weirdly stopped referring to me as Blur. I think you've all just gotten used to the speed of my videos. The colors here are so much cooler than the original. The normal Blur breakup can kind of get boring. It's mostly just the same shade of blue with some silver. But on this one, even the lighter shade is much richer than the normal version. And then the royal blue on the rest of this cobalt bastard looks so premium. Plus, he's still got the silver accents along with some new black ones that look great, and even some orange for the chest plate. I don't know who picked these colors or how they worked out so well, but this looks awesome. The proportions on him, however, are as abysmal as they have always been, and I don't understand it. The TR Blur had fine proportions. How is it when this is just that thing without the headmaster gimmick and some shoulder spacers, it somehow has this wonky build that makes it look like a cardboard cutout? Fists are still weird stop signs, and the arm flaps still want to droop, so it's safe to say that any build problems the original figure had have not been greatly improved by this retool. The head is interesting. On the one hand, I have no idea what they were going for, as this head is creepy and messed up, looking a bit like an evil doll, but at the same time, based on the comic that came with this, that doesn't fit the character at all, and this sculpt really doesn't capture the design from his only depiction. So I guess this is just another case of the 86 figures having exceedingly poorly handled heads. On the other hand, this is 100,000 times better and less horrifying than what was supposed to be the normal head, when that looked like handsome Squidward run through a photorealistic filter. The worst thing about this head is just how uncomfortably pronounced the lips are. But other than that, I got no complaints, and this actually seems to be cast in opaque plastic, so there should be no risk of the neck socket being brittle. Transformation is still as awkward as ever, and I don't know how they managed to mess up such a good one so badly, but at least the shoulder extenders feel less willing to fall off. I think. And holy crap! The robot mode was already a big improvement, but the new alt mode rocks so hard! The new color layout is now accompanied by a cool lightning paint job, and I'm not quite sure why that's there, other than lightning is also fast. But it is pretty interesting to see a bad guy who isn't just using the try-hard flames, so points to Evil Blur for not being a cliché. I also didn't mention this enough in the main figure, but I love the amber of his new windshield. I'm not sure what it's reminding me of, but it's hitting me right in the childhood in some way. Now on to Silver Streak. The blue streak, that's actually blue. I picked this one up a good while back because on my original Earthrise Smokescreen review, I said I recommended that figure, only to find out later that it had a supreme reputation for breaking. So I wanted to know if this version of the mold fixed that guy's problems, so I could give you guys a warning about it if need be. Unfortunately, this video took so long to come out that I don't see these on shelves anymore because everywhere is sold out. So I guess I missed my window on that. Which is too bad because while I had terrible QC myself on the Smokescreen mold, though mine didn't break, honestly, this one somehow feels insanely worse. I've gotten messages from people who've told me that this figure feels better than the other versions, but I've gotten an equal number of messages assuring me it does not. And that lines up with my experience, because when I went to buy this figure, originally I grabbed the first one I saw, only to take a look at it on my way up to the counter and realize that the paint was fully fucked on the head. The crest was basically painted in one long streak from here to the back of his helmet, so I went and grabbed the only other one that didn't have a horrible QC problem with the head, and when there were 4 of these things on the shelf at the time, that should tell you something about how much Hasbro seems to have given a damn about this specific release. I was full of dread on my way home for how the figure was going to turn out, and that didn't even half prepare me for just how awful this thing is. For starters, look at his thighs. These are not supposed to have that gap, and it's on both of them where they just couldn't get the plastic to connect. The knees are loose as shit, as are the ankles. Every joint on this feels like it's grinding in the most uncomfortable way. His gun still won't fit in his hands. And what's more, transforming this into either mode is almost impossible since every surface is warped, so parts just don't want to line up. Like I have to flex the plastic something fierce to get the arms to peg in, and they flat out don't in alt mode, which just constantly wants to spring apart like a particularly shoddy Jack-in-the-Box. The car looks fine, but it feels so bad it makes you nauseous just being around it. Avoid this thing like the fucking plague it is. The Earthrise Dotson mold is cancer. Next up, these aren't really a repaint, though they are kind of something of a retool, but I wanted to buy these so that way I could tell you if there is a way to get a bunch of Sharkticons without paying an arm and a leg for them. And I'm gonna say that you probably don't want to buy these knockoffs. For starters, they are half scale, which these things fail to make clear anywhere. While that's not a huge deal breaker, it does mean that you are paying like 2/3 the cost for like half the material. And while I appreciate the fact that they retooled the gun so that way they have the hole rather than the peg, they didn't take advantage of that by putting the peg on both sides of the Sharkticon so you could have them be heavily armed. But these things' worst problems are their QC. It's bad to the point where I can't get any of them fully transformed, and while every joint is vastly tighter, which I appreciate coming off the normal one, it does make me worry about breaking them. Plus there were plastic strings hanging off every angle of these guys, and there's stuff like pins splitting right through the plastic. These are what people tend to mean when they call something a shoddy knockoff. They aren't worthless, they're mostly well painted, and they'd work well with Legends figures, but I am not willing to put any kind of stamp of approval on these things. The only reason I even consider them is that they never seem to release enough of the Sharkticon mold to really troop build with it like a lot of people want to. Moving on to another small figure, it's Legacy Skywarp. This is just the Starscream again, somehow having the same flaws as before, like a miscolored crotch section, but it adds the new befuddling issue by not having its null rays. Instead, it comes with this shitty, stupid tuning fork, just so that way it can be part of Hot Rod's terrible weapon, which literally only makes it worse. It's the same sword, but with a much bigger, jagged handle that's probably jabbing you in the wrist and grating your skin off, and adding 10 times the weight to the damn thing for no advantage. This is awful, I hate it, why the fuck did you bother, Hasbro, and how dare you make Skywarp worse to facilitate this piece of shit? Otherwise, this would probably be better than the Starscream, as this is almost identical to it, but the head hides a lot more seamlessly in the alt mode due to the colors. And then you got Beast Wars Buzzsaw, and oh god damn those colors. I both didn't realize how nostalgic I was for the BW Buzzsaw paint job. I don't even remember much about having it as a kid, other than I just know that I did, but looking at this unlocks those deep memories. And I mean, just look at this! This color scheme is both fly as fuck, pun intended, kill me, and also just so well handled. This seems like he has the paint budget of not only himself, but like 3 other figures. It's so cool it kind of hurts me. The head is interesting. Weirdly enough, it's the opposite of what the other figures have been doing, instead giving the Waspinator Mold its non-mutant head. And I think there's a reason the original one is the iconic one. I mean, this isn't awful, it's just a bit strange with its weird Viking undertones. Though I do find this to be one of the coolest instances of light piping, because I guess this mold is just doomed to have good light piping. The eyes actually don't light up that well unless you hose down the back of his head with a flashlight, and it's really cool when you do, because it's got this incredibly weird effect where it feels like you're looking into a different dimension through his eyes. But I think even cooler than that is when there is some ambient light and his face is in the shade, because then his glasses remain dark, but his lightweight yellow plastics channel the light even better, causing it to look like his eyes are radiating light onto his cheeks. It's a really unique effect, and my god, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I love this light piping. Who even am I? Then the bug mode looks about exactly as good, retaining all of its paint and even having its own cool light piping. Of this Walmart exclusive wave of Legacy, this is the only one I bothered to get for good reason, and I'm extremely happy to have this and not have the others. Lastly, Shattered Glass Starscream. So I've had this for months and it's just been sitting on my shelves the whole time, and if you know this figure, you know that it's got a problem with yellowing. But quite frankly, I don't think it's caused by light, because I was shocked to find that this figure hadn't yellowed at all on the front. But here's the thing, he had yellowed on the back when he was pressed up against a wall in the single most protected location from light in the entire room. I don't think this is yellowing from light, I think it's yellowing from ambient material it's picking up somehow, like dust or something. I don't know what to say about this other than 1, the Starscream head sculpt finally makes sense, and 2, this thing looks sick as shit. The Skyfire color scheme really agrees with this design. Almost every detail on it is striking and cool, from the red Decepticon badge to the blue canopy to the ornate chest and stark white of the rest of it. The red pylons against the white is a cool and unique look, and they painted over the light piping as they should, unless apparently we're talking about the Waspinator Mold. I love every detail about this thing. Too bad it apparently rots like milk over time, because I would have given this a hearty recommendation based on the robot mode alone, if you could still get this. The new swords are cool too. I feel like they could have given it a half handle that combines, but this isn't that big a compromise. Though I do question why the shorter handle tapers like that, making it hard to fit in a lot of hands. But at least for once, it's a sword on a figure that can fake some sword-wielding wrists. Great accessory, but a very bland alt mode. This looks like a Christmas-themed Oreo, and that's the most interesting thing I can say about that. And now that we're at the end, I realize the only things that I'm actually recommending are the Buzzsaw and Blur, and I'm at least not warding you away from the Skywarp despite the tuning fork. Though, were it not for that, it'd be a recommend as well. And I just don't know if the Tigertron is doing enough to justify $40 from you for a weird version of the same character. As for the Starscream, he's just too prone to self-destructing. And the other stuff is plain trash that will disintegrate if you mess with it, so avoid. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.